Today, on average, any given day, there's over 400,000 kids in foster care.
These are kids who may or may not be able to be reunited with their biological family, and there's upwards of 100,000 that are waiting for adoptive homes that can't be reunited with their families.
On average, 3 out of 4 kids in foster care that are removed from their homes are removed due to physical neglect, which is oftentimes linked to unmet basic needs, poverty, unstable housing, lack of social support, untreated mental health. And these are all reasons that we look at and say, those are preventable.
From the very beginning of the early church, caring for widows and orphans was at the center of what the church would do because there was no social safety net that the government had.
In the early 2000s, there was a call to the church to step up into this ancient commitment, and that's exactly what began to happen. As more families considered adoption, more families began to step into foster care. Churches began to wrap around and support these families in very just tangible ways.
And then if you actually look at the data in that season, you see it did make a huge difference. Kids in care went down by 25% over a 10-year time period. And then you look at the next 10 years, it basically flatlined, even went up.
There have been big times of progress, as you say, and we're still at a crisis level. Things are not good. The current system is producing really bad results, and lots of efforts to reform sort of start and then fizzle because there's often not room to innovate, to consider different ways of doing things.
There's no question we're continually living in this tension of recognizing that human pain and ache will always be with us. Like it says in Romans, creation groans and we groan inwardly. And I think we're going to feel that way until Jesus returns. And yet at the same time, we can look across history and say, when wise people who are animated by the Spirit of God step into very broken situations, they can bring real change, real transformation. And whether you're looking at the slave trade and William Wilberforce, we're looking at the polio vaccine and the way that that we can really see significant transformation when wisdom is applied to the most complex issues.
The importance of innovation is to look at what's maybe gotten us here. So we've made some meaningful impact in the foster care space to date. So it's not to say that it's all bad. But the importance of innovation is what's gotten us here might not get us to where we need to go.
I think that in the child welfare area, particularly in the church, there's a lot of people that are doing amazing work, but we're all disconnected from each other. And none of us have the time or energy to all come together to think about the collective impact, to think about how do we solve this problem nationwide and not just in our region, in our city.
In the work that we've been doing around trying to reimagine the foster care system, we spent a better part of a year talking to more than 100 nonprofit leaders, experts, people with lived experience. We looked at a bunch of data. We used all of that to understand, okay, where is this problem stuck? What are some big levers for change? Where are innovative things happening? Where is God moving? And then now, can we align that around a redemptive vision and a strategy and a plan that gives us a chance to move the needle? It's much harder to go from looking at an individual organization to zooming out and thinking about a problem as a whole. But we think that's what it takes. We launched Flourish Fund as a way of learning from secular models that we thought had relevance and were missing in the Christian problem-solving world. It's rooted in our assessment of how a lot of giving happens right now, where people give in highly individualistic ways that are often siloed, centered on individual organizations, the resulting often subscale and low risk, and keeps a lot of money on the sidelines, actually, when we know there are billions of dollars sitting in donor-advised funds waiting to be activated. And so our reason for being is to say, can we shape a strategy and a redemptive thesis around what might be possible to move the needle on this topic? And then we pool capital from generous families who see a value proposition and effectively levering up their giving by pooling it with others to enable us to do something on a more transformative scale than anyone can do individually.
Flourish Fund is a little bit in the middle in that they are a funder, deploying capital, but they also have, some programmatic bent to them. They're actually helping the funding be spent in a certain way, helping measure how it's going, providing resources to the doers as they do their work. And I think they've hunted for, where are those unique overlaps? Where are the unique sort of places of partnership between, the formal system and churches, for example, that, with more resources, with some time and patience, could really bear fruit.
So the vision ultimately is to reimagine foster care in America. And what does that mean? That's a big, lofty statement. I think what that means in practice is we are shifting the way that local communities care for vulnerable kids and families. We think that's possible, but it's going to take a 5 to 10 year time horizon. And we really think around some high-level outcomes, including reducing the top-line number of kids in foster care and making that experience for those who do need to enter foster care a far less traumatic, more effective one, with greater placement stability and the other things that just are the markers of what kids need for healthy development.
Bringing significant capital into this realm serves a dual purpose, both of which are critical. First of all, it funds programs and services. That is necessary, and we recognize that. But a second part is that well-deployed capital incentivizes collaboration.
There are a lot of incredibly effective organizations, and yet no one in the domain of complex problems, which is most of the things that matter, no one can solve that problem in isolation. But a lot of nonprofit leaders, they wake up every day thinking about, how do I crush my goals? How do I keep my board happy? How do I make sure that I can continue to pay the bills and meet the P&L? There's little margin left to say, what's happening to the right of left of me? How am I to collaborate with other partners that are solving other parts of this problem? So we think about trying to deploy philanthropic capital in a way that actually incentivizes different people to work together in new ways.
I love the way the Flourish Fund seeks to enter communities, not with the feeling that the Flourish Fund has all the answers or is going to be doing everything itself. Quite the opposite. It's saying there is great work happening here. There are many wonderful people doing vital things. And yet, as the Flourish Fund, we can bring in both capital and a coordinated strategy that enables all the pieces that are already there to work together in a fresh, deeper, more impactful way.
EMA was developed really around the needs of mom. And so we wanted to establish this foster care prevention program, go upstream, focus on the crisis at its root. What are some of the most sustainable issues that we can address, and how can we do that? And so what better way than to start with their moms, empowering and equipping these women, where the foster care system becomes a very, very last resort instead of the first response. So at all odds, we're going to deploy every resource and support system and mechanism possible for those families to be successful at raising their own kids.
And that's where our hope is to bring capital and strategic support. The same way a private equity venture capital investor would walk alongside a company on a long-term growth journey, we want to find those amazing faith-driven social entrepreneurs and walk alongside them to say, how do we take what you're doing and take it to a much broader scale?
There's a really important role for government to play, but unfortunately, the role that the church used to play in being a lead in responding to the needs of children in crisis and families in crisis, it used to be that the churches were the most engaged. But now we've, in so many ways, outsourced that to the government, and we've allowed it to be a professionalized service with a bunch of social workers and others who are working really hard, but have more than they can handle. And this is why we as the church need to step in, where we're driven from a sense of calling, a sense of sacrifice and service to do this, to open up homes, to provide short-term care, long-term care, sometimes permanent care for children and families that are in crisis. And so our heart and prayer is that we can do this on a small citywide scale, and that it can not only inspire other churches in other places, but it can inspire policymakers who have the resources to scale this up at a much larger level.
we, on the one hand, will always have human brokenness as long as, until Jesus returns. And I long for that day. And yet, even as we are working amidst a world that is very broken, we can see very substantive, redemptive work being done in our world by the people of God, where we see lives that had no hope have hope. We see families that had disintegrated being brought back together. And we can even see on the level of systems and across entire communities, we can see something that looks fundamentally different 5 and 10 years from now than we see today.
But I think it's an ongoing discipline to be able to have that level of belief, to say, hey, we think God's heart is he's not okay with this. And we think there's actually a chance that we could fix this. I think it requires a combination of boldness and courage that usually happens in the context of community, people who are reinforcing those truths to you, to say, how do we have that level of appropriate kingdom ambition for what we know is God's heart for vulnerable kids?